Welcome, friends, to yet another episode of Ed Hartman's Wild World of Music and Film. This is take two because, frankly, a few minutes ago we started this and I forgot to hit the record button. I'm admitting my stupidity. Okay, but we're going to do it again. In fact, we've already talked about a few things. So, what the hell? Anyway,
Good warm
I
up.
want
It's
to
good
I
warm
want to
up.
I want to welcome my most esteemed and infamous filmmaker friend, Mr. Ben Barack Andrews in Seattle, Washington. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ed, for having me. I appreciate it. I need to hire you as my hype man.
You're what?
My hype man.
Oh,
You
height.
know?
I thought you
Yeah,
said
hype
height.
man.
I'm not high. Well, I'm not tall. I may be high after this. Okay. Well, gee, I'm having deja vu. Yeah. So anyway, I've known Ben for a number of years, and we met through the Seattle International Film Festival. Fly Film Festival. It has nothing to do with pants. It's the fly in the ointment was a challenge that each filmmaker had to do. Anyway, the short story is that I was connected with Ben through the Seattle Composers Alliance and the Seattle International Film Festival, which puts together filmmakers and composers and teams to create films. And we did a wonderful film called The Three Stars. And so Ben, how did that come about to you?
Uh, yeah, I think that might have been the last year they did it, or one of the last years that they did it. And Washington Filmworks did it in partnership with Seattle International Film Festival, as you mentioned, and they pick four local directors and they give them these. I think we get 7 days. I'm going to just stick with that. It's 7 days to write, to shoot, and to get into post production. And we're given a couple of these, as you said, flies in the anointment. For us, we were given a locally famous jazz musician. Her name's Samantha Bosniak. As you mentioned,
Yeah, I
Ed,
think so.
in the warm up, we'll go with that. And then we were given, which was really interesting. We were given the International District, a neighborhood in Seattle that's obviously I mean, it's Chinese influence, Vietnamese, Korean, all like the whole area is it's like a Chinatown, for lack of better terms. Um, and then we were supposed to marry these little elements, and then you came in and really did an amazing job on because from somebody who's not a musician, I'm like, okay, jazz is not really culturally anything that you find in China, and so mixing those elements was a cool little experiment that I think all of us had fun trying to figure out.
Yeah, and what I was really, what was so fun for me is a lot of the scores I do are virtual, so I don't have access to live musicians because there's no money in the score. But I was kind of thrown a great trumpet player, and she did a wonderful job of improvising on top of a bed of a score that I'd created with an Asian influence, and she did just an incredible job in the scene that just constantly goes back in my head as the birthing scene,
Yeah.
and she's just tooting, man, this incredible thing, and I don't know, it just gives chills. I thought it was, and you guys edited that really well because the mother kind of is screaming right as the trumpet's coming out, and it's just this classic lion thing, or
Yeah.
elephant call or whatever. Yeah.
I want to say that was maybe I had been my second or third short that I'd ever directed. And
Oh.
um, what I really loved about that one is that I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because it is to this day one of my favorite ones. And really, what the thought that process that I rallied behind was this Eastern meets Western culture, right? And the
Yeah.
story is essentially a Western developer coming in. He's going to tear down these buildings in the International District, and one of these buildings is a little Chinese tea shop, and anyway, the developer is showing his, just to give you some story, the developer is showing his wife this new development, and she's pregnant, and so she kind of goes, she has to use the restroom, so she goes in there and ends up having to go into labor, and the old Chinese uh, tea shop Cantonese gentleman helps her give birth. Long story short, but the but what I really liked about it is I had to do some study of Eastern culture, obviously, and I read the Tao Te Ching, which is a book of Eastern philosophy that I love to this day. Uh, and as a visual experiment, Westerners in English, we read left to right and down, right? Whereas the way Chinese read is right to left. And so we're left to right, they're right to left. And when it comes to visual filmmaking, you'll see in a lot of Western movies, when your protagonist first comes into the film, he's entering left to right because that's what our brains are subconsciously trained to read, left to right. So our protagonist enters left to right, and it makes us feel comfortable. And you'll also notice the opposite of that is when your antagonist in a movie often will come in from the right side, and that's just a subconscious unsettling because you're used to seeing left to right, and so when you're right to left, your brain kind of goes, what's going on here?
Man, I had no idea that.
Well, these were things I was learning then, and so for me, in this story, what we find out is the narrator that's telling the story is actually an adult version of the baby, and then the Chinese gentleman became his godfather. And so when we have when we're looking at the Western developer and his family, we're doing a lot of traditional left to right, camera left to right. With the Chinese, we do right to left. And then with the narrator, when we meet him, what we do is we go up and down and left and right, just trying to visually marry these cultures. And it's very subconscious. You would never notice unless they told you.
I never noticed that. You got me, and I believe I have that link on my website under the real links, so you can see it. It's like it's on Vimeo or something.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to rewatch it now. It's just fun for
yeah. Yeah. I mean, as a filmmaker, I think most directors or filmmakers look back and we're just really seeing all the stuff we screwed up on. And but as far as that project goes, there were elements in there that to this day, I'm like, man, that was really cool what we came up with as a team.
It really was, and the team worked well, as far as I can tell. I mean, and I was really impressed with just your whole group. I mean, everything was organized, and things happened, and that's been true of everything I've done with you guys. That there's been an organization actually to the film, and it was been nice. I guess that's why I want to keep working with you. I mean, inevitably you work with people you like,
Yeah, you create your tribe.
Yeah. About it. So, and then we did two other things as far as I can tell, because you were involved in Trauma, right? Was that yours, or was that
Trauma?
The short with David and his wife. It was down in Renton, I think. It was a little short. It was for a 48-hour film festival.
I don't
probably.
Know. I'm a lot of the times with a lot of these short films that my friends are doing, I'm helping facilitate a location.
I wasn't sure if you had directed that or if
I don't even remember.
Well, anyway, I connected with you. That's all right.
Yeah. There's half of their films I am involved in somehow, whether it's as an actor or locations or producer.
I mean, you guys. So what is Mighty Tripod Media?
They're a production company, and they're also an acting school. David Hogan and Angela DeMarco are probably, I consider them two of Seattle's finest movers and shakers. I mean, these are two of the best actors in town, but they're also incredible producers. They're very organized. And they both directed at this point. And matter of fact, David's his directorial debut, The Parish, just uh, is now in Walmarts and Targets, and it's
Wow,
just uh, being distributed all over the country right now. So
that's
love those
great.
guys.
Yeah, yeah, they're impressive. Yeah, I'm always amazed at all the stuff they're doing.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then the more recent thing was The Son, the Father, which was
Hmm.
Lucas Hassel's screenplay that was a winner of Holly Shorts, and then he part of that agreement was working with you guys uh, to, to to actually produce the film in
Hmm.
Seattle.
Yep,
And
we have a
yeah,
production partnership with the Holly Shorts.
and that was quite a project. All I know is I did at least 7 redos of that.
Oh gosh. Lucas, who to this day is one of, I'll just say, like, he's one of my mentors. Like,
Yeah,
this is a dude who his life has been dedicated to the art form of acting and filmmaking, and only in the last few years has he become a director. But somebody who really knows specifically what he wants and really sees it in his head and can give a very clear direction to his community without stomping on people. You know what I mean? Like, without
yeah.
making people buy into his vision. And but he definitely, with you, I'm not sure how that went, but I can imagine he's like, no, I need this adjusted. No, I need this adjusted. No.
Well, I think part of it is he was I think he had a kind of an expectation of other things musically, and then this was kind of part of the package for him. So I was maybe thrown at him.
Oh well,
But I
I
think
know.
all in all, it came out pretty well. You know,
Yeah, it's one of our most. Uh,
yeah,
I
it
want
won
to say.
won a lot of awards. Not as many as the Earth Turns, but
Yeah, yeah.
that was my my competition in my head. I was going to beat Lucas's film.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
that's funny.
absolutely. He
And you
got like
did.
50 or 60. We're up to like 122 festivals.
Nice, nice. How many? You've gotten some wins too. Like,
134 awards nominations
wow, look at you.
and 34 for best score awards and nominations. So that was really yeah.
Yeah. Well,
But
then
but
you've
that
got, yeah, you got
yeah
that
that
beat then.
that was a stepping stone though. I mean it really was because it was really having to go back and forth with the director, a lot. I was talking in my last, just did a show about electronic scoring and myself, and I dropped in the credit sequence, the credit music, which
Oh
was
yeah.
this really weird groove that I created with the dialogue reversed. So
To,
kind of like a
to,
Zoom interview with bad sound.
yeah.
So
To this day, that credit sequence is, and when we were making that film, he's like, and at the credit sequence, I want this just really this it messes with your brain like
right.
psycho. And man, boy, is it.
Yeah, no,
Still to this
ironically
day.
that was probably the big piece that wound up, in my score because a lot of it got cut. I
Yeah.
thought the funniest thing that happened was at one point I had scored, again all these versions, and I had sent
Mm.
all of them together to the editor, and they wound up, I think, doing a mix with all of them. So it was wall to wall score. And Lucas went, wait a minute, man. No, no. He wanted the
Oh,
opposite. He wanted nearly nothing.
yeah.
And so
Whoops.
I think that kind of blew it right out. What do
Yeah.
you do?
You
Anyway,
live and learn.
intense movie.
It
So,
is an intense movie. There's
yeah.
no
So
doubt about
anyway,
that.
we have some history,
Yes,
and
we do.
so
And obviously,
hopefully
we've just relived about
there
20
you
minutes of it.
go. That's right. All right. So where are you from, and where are you now? I mean
Uh,
specifically, not psychologically.
yeah, I was born and raised in southern Idaho in a really small town. Uh, Born in Jerome and raised in Wendell, Idaho, like 1,000 people. And then when I was probably teens, middle school, I came to Washington and ended up graduating high school from Puyallup High School. Washington, and now for the last 15 years or so, I've been living in Renton, Washington.
Wow. Okay. So you have moved. Well, you moved maybe 500 miles or so in total. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
estimate.
Something like that. I've done the Boise Seattle run
Mm, yeah, that's like
in
a
one
10 hour,
day. Yeah.
10
Um,
hour run.
all right. And one thing that's really intriguing is you've embraced community, and you can tell by that thing behind you about the Seattle Film Institute. I think one reason I gravitate to you is I've done similar things. I've created organizations and been involved in them, and that's always been. I'm doing this. I mean, this is another version of this, and you put on these amazing Seattle Film Summits, and really brought a lot of film and music people together in Seattle. More than just about anything I've seen up to this point. I'm seeing that in a number of organizations and companies around the world right now, especially over a pandemic. There's a thing called Sync Summit run by Mark Fraser, and he was doing very similar things to you, but in the music and music supervisor side.
Mm.
And Taxi in LA was another company that does a similar thing. So, I've been to the Seattle Film Summit live. I participated on a panel. And this year I thought it was tremendous. It went on for 3 weeks virtually, which kind of made up for the 3 days live. That was insane. You're still recovering.
170 panelists from around the world over
Wow.
3 weeks, plus 55 actors for our Love 'em table reads. Um, yeah, yeah, and it was. But we were. It almost killed me, but I'm super proud of it.
Right.
We had viewers from 27 different countries, and we did this organically. I mean, we all know currently the social climate is really all inclusionary and equality, and that's definitely something that I stand for. But what was really cool about the summit is we're just trying to line up panelists, right? We're trying to blow through this, and we get 170 panelists, and then I'm like 3 days before the summit, I'm like, oh, I should do the math. We should just check how diverse we are. We ended up, so we did this organically. We ended up of the 170, 50% of them were female industry
Yeah.
influencers, and 25% were from culturally diverse from all across the world. So we were like, all right, we're doing something right.
Yeah, I'm trying to reach out to female filmmakers. When I first did a thing, there's one gal I'm going to chat with this week, and I'm hoping for more as well. So it's an issue, and composer side is a real problem.
Oh
There's
yeah,
there's a
yeah, I'll
real
bet.
lack of female composers, worldwide. So hopefully that starts to get adjusted.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think it's happening. I mean,
Yeah.
I think uh, women like to call it the glass ceiling. I mean, I'm sure there's different terms for it, but yeah, it feels, it feels like, well, we're humans, so it feels like a
That's
shit
right.
show. But
Yeah.
we're in a time period right now where it's changing, and I think it's really important as filmmakers that change, because there is no gender and there is no color that we are aware of our soul.
Right.
All of our soul is just a unique. It's a unique impression on this planet that has value, and we can all learn from everybody's unique soul. So I kind of look at it that way, like this is just what we're wearing, whether it's our gender or our color or whatever. But at the end of the day, we all have unique voices, the soul inside of us. And so we as filmmakers, I think it's our obligation to be making sure we're hearing diverse voices.
Yeah. It becomes an issue with composition because there's a lot of cultural appropriation going on, and I find myself. I mean, I just love music from around the world, so I have no problem myself with doing Latin and jazz world
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But you got to be a little bit, you know, concerned about that, and you want to make sure when you do that, you're doing it, with respect and trying to do
Respectfully.
some
Yeah.
research and the rest of it. So it's an issue in everything we're doing these days.
Well, it's interesting. from my perspective, I was going back to how I was raised. Was in a very inclusionary religion. Some might even say cultish, just because it was small. But we were, the rest of the world's bad, and we were in this small group, and art was not in our house. It was really all about worship of God, and so art and movies and all that was a little bit of the worldliness, and we shouldn't touch it. So I was an adult before I really started embracing what creativity meant to me. But I'm telling you, through creativity, uh, I have learned the most about other cultures. Because I mean, our fly film is a perfect example.
Yeah.
We have to do a film on the International District, and I'm telling you, just the research in that time, like I fell in love with the tea ceremonies and a lot of the Eastern teachings about who we are as human beings and meditation. I'm like, where has this been my entire
Yeah.
life?
Well, that film has a slow pacing to it, which is really nice. It sits, on scenes. It's not in a short film. You feel like, oh, you're gonna have to get through all this action, this story, but it's atmospheric, and that really. And I watch tons of Asian movies. I'm just totally addicted, especially martial arts stuff, and it just their framing and it's pure art.
Sidebar. HBO Max, Warrior. Have you seen the TV
No,
series?
I have not.
You just
I'll look
trust
at it,
me,
huh?
watch
Okay.
it.
Okay. Well,
It's
yeah.
it's it's done by Justin Lin. It's made in China, I believe. And Justin Lin did all like the Fast and Furious, and he did
Yeah.
Star Trek Beyond. But this is a TV series about San Francisco just after the Civil War. So you have a
Right.
Chinatown, you have the art, you have the Irish culture, and then and there's kung fu in it that is some of the best
Right.
kung fu fighting you'll ever see. But it's more than that. It's really
Right.
about
Right.
what we've been talking about. So you
There
should
you
watch
go.
it if
All
you
right.
like martial arts.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I have some questions here that are kind of relative to film and music, and so we'll start. How did you start on I assume, the film side?
Uh, yeah, I started out as an actor, and that was because I was. It's literally this is how it happened. I was 32, and I had years of project management experience, right? Just years of it, to the extent of I was raised in a construction family in Idaho. So when I was 8 years old, I was probably out doing construction with my father. And so at the age of 14, I was a foreman on his construction sites, right? So like I at the age of 14, I was running a crew. Uh,
All right, there, Ben. Here's a nice little saw here. Don't chop your hands off.
exactly. It was probably illegal to be doing what my dad had me doing, but whatever.
Yeah,
That was
there
30
you
years ago. They don't care. They didn't care about kids back then.
Yeah, right.
Um, but anyway, so I was in a bar, and I walked past this lady who was at the bar with a book, and it had lines in it. And I had seen a couple scripts before, so I knew what a script was. And I wasn't hitting on her. I was just literally like, "Hey, excuse me, are you reading a script?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm in a play right over here in Renton, right around the corner." And then she introduced me to the director of the play, and he heard what I have now heard 1,000 times, and what you hear from everybody once you tell them that you've done acting. Like, I've always wanted to be an actor. I think that's the cool thing. And so I told him that, and he's like, "Yeah, whatever, buddy." But then he gave me a couple tasks. He's like, "If you really want to do it, then read this or show up to this table reading." So I just did it. And I started acting for about 4 or 5 years. I should say I started learning how to be an actor. Uh, and then I started learning how really tough it is to be an actor. And then inevitably, when I was getting on these independent sets, because I had that project management background, it was just a matter of time before people started pulling me in to produce. I'm like, yeah, of course, this is easy. This is project management. I'm better at
Wow.
this than acting.
Oh wow.
And
So
that's
you
how it
can yeah
started.
you can draw an interesting line between your earlier work and the reason you went into the production side as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a far better producer at this point than I am an actor.
I still want to see you and David do the police guys.
Oh yeah, we have another script we've been thinking
Really?
about doing.
I'll score it. I thought
Awesome.
that was great.
Yeah,
There's
that
all
was fun.
filmmakers are always putting out these little videos, and you're like, yeah, I want more of that, man. And that's usually what turns into like a mega movie.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, we had fun. That was,
uh,
you know, what's so funny is we did what you're speaking of is just this little 2 minute cop skit where me and David Hogan are the camera never moves. It's just on the two of us, and we're supposedly looking into an interrogation chamber, and the criminal's in there, and we're talking about that criminal. It's a good cop, bad cop sort of thing. But like we just wanted to do something, so we turned on the camera and we had this kind of guideline of what we wanted to say, and then we riffed off of each other. And to this day, that is one of my favorite things I've ever done as an actor.
right. Well, that's improv. And I, when I was growing up, I was in improv groups in high school.
Mm,
Music improvisation stuff. There was a thing called Weird Group, and we played
weird group.
weird music. Yeah, but a lot of it was
Uh,
improvised, and I really
awesome.
got into it. And when college, I had a group of a couple other composers I worked with, and we had a group called the Mild Bunch, and we put on a show with film. Actually, with Super 8 film, I filmed this entering this anyway. It's a weird thing, but that was the funnest concert I've ever done.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
cool.
yeah, yeah. That's kind of sad, actually.
Well, it just, I mean, it teaches you a lesson about life, right? And
Yeah,
it teaches you about like we get stuck in these lanes that we're
yeah,
doing our art and we're doing our work and all for these intentional purposes because we think we control our lives.
right.
The God honest truth is that the most joy we've experienced was from something that was spontaneous
Yep.
and organic and not planned because that's where we find our greatest art in my impression or
Well, I
in my
one reason I
opinion.
wanted these podcasts I like doing is they are exactly that, and I'm even playing along, while I'm doing these
Yeah.
sometimes, and I thought I could score my own podcast. We could do, we could. So what do you think there, Ben?
Yeah. Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. Anyway, and of course, scoring is something you do after the fact, so it's not really an improvisation. Well, it can be. I mean, I improvised my way through scores. As Your Turns was largely an improvisation to begin with, and then I scored from that.
Yeah.
Creating themes and stuff like that. So it was. I tried to keep it. I guess maybe part of it was going back to like silent movies where you had piano or organ
Mm,
accompanists, and they were creating scores on the just on the whatever.
yeah.
In fact, I had a book when I was growing up. My dad had found from a library or something, and it was little pieces of music from that were available for organists to score, and it had scenes, thrilling scene or whatever, and these little pieces of music, whatever, pretty hilarious. And I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So, who was your inspirations if you were to look at the film side for you? That when you first kind of got going with this, was there anything that really kind of inspired you to do this? I mean, you came in again from the acting side, but I don't know, you tell me what.
That's a great question, and I think I don't know if I've had an inspiration per se. I've worked with people that inspire me, like David and Angela and Lucas, even you, people that jump in and just what I love about the community is you find certain tribal members. I'm just going to use that term,
Yeah,
and they jump in, and you quickly learn that even though they're talented, they're not making this art for themselves. They're making it for this collaboration of film, and people that really do that effectively and well, yet still keep their creative through line or their the what's driving them, this kind of unique soul perspective, yet not at the expense of others, but at the elevation of others. God, sign me up. I will follow you to the
right.
grave. I love
Yeah,
people
yeah,
like that. Uh, and for me, again, growing up in this religion that was very small and inclusive and not a lot of exposure to the outside world, the one thing that I did have a blessing, I look at it as a blessing, is I've spent close to 10,000 hours from the age of 4 all the way to the age of 27, going to the doors of people to tell them about God. And 80% of those people didn't want me at those doors. And so when I look back at that, like what a great training to learn people, right? Like facing, almost 10,000 hours and thousands of people from every walk of life, and their first reaction to you is probably a negative one. You really learn to kind of read people. And so anyway, I use that as an example of, fast forward, and I got into what I learned as an adult is that with zero art in my heart, zero art in my heart, I was lost. And so my midlife crisis came in my 30s because I had no art and I knew something was missing. And then a few years into this, I realized that the creativity that I was immersing myself in, whether it was directing or producing or acting, I was filling that void, and it was helping me discover who I was as a human being. And that's why it's easy for me to be a champion for arts and film. And that's why I do the Seattle Film Summit. That's why I do all these things that bring, people together, because it's saved me, right? It's like my religion. Like, oh, it's like this good news. This saved me. Why wouldn't I want to share that with everybody? And so that's my inspiration. I think art and creativity saved me. And so it inspires me to keep sending that message to others. Like, hey, keep going. Your voice is wonderful. Your voice, and when I mean voice, your soul. Like, just keep learning to tell it better and better and better.
When you first came out of that, as you were kind of coming out of this limited view, and you got exposed to art, what was some of your, who was like, was there anything that came at you that you were like totally shocked by, that again, you kind of got introduced to art later in life?
Mm-hmm.
So what hit you over the head? Was there something, a film, a filmmaker, a piece of music, anything like that just kind of, because it's an extraordinary story when you think about it, what you did, because most people grow up with a very smooth, amount of stuff. It may not be,
Right.
It could be popular, it could be none, but again, you kind of did there had to be like a little bit of a tsunami that you had to experience.
Well, I think I was teased, because even though I wasn't exposed to it, I would sneak, right? And I'm Gen X. I think I'm closing in on 46. Yeah, that's right. I'll be 46 next month. And so I like to tell people, hey, I'm the Gandalf. I'm the grandfather of the video game age. Like we had Atari and Pong, and like we were there at the beginning. And so I would sneak. And I remember when I was 12, I kind of snuck and read Lord of the Rings, and I watched Star Trek. So I have a really sci-fi fantasy influence in my life. That was a real inspiration for me, because, speaking of completely out of, crazy creativity, stuff that just doesn't exist. And so when I would, touch those things, whether I watch Lord of the Rings, I'd just be like, this has got to be the most amazing thing. And this person that created this, like Tolkien and even George Lucas, like at that time, right now, that kind of fantasy and sci-fi has all kinds of precedent, right?
Yeah.
Like it's all been done now. But at that time, they were basing all their creativity off of, like War of the Worlds and Edgar Rice Burroughs. Like they didn't have a huge slate of people to learn from. This was truly their brilliance. So those people kind of inspire me.
Well, and speaking of sci-fi, I'm completely obsessed with Blue Book, Operation Blue Book, that's on the History Channel, and it finally made it to free on IMDb TV. I've finally been able to catch up, and that's about Alan Hynek, who was literally the Project Blue Book guy, which was the Air Force's original research on UFOs. It's a great series, anyway. I mentioned that because there's a scene in this one I just watched where he's actually in Close Encounters in 1970s. He does a
Oh, really?
cameo because he literally wrote that. I mean,
I didn't know. I didn't
Spielberg
know he was in.
based, I should say he didn't write it, but Spielberg based that on a lot of his writings. It's a really well made series. Has 2 seasons. I've been floored by it. How much of it is speculative, who knows, but it's wonderful production on there. So and I grew up watching The Day the Earth Stood Still and
Mhm.
the original War of the Worlds, stuff like that. I just totally in love. In fact, on a Facebook group they were asking who are your composer heroes, and I thought about this because it's real easy to say John Williams, and he is. I mean, he's a god as far as I'm
Yep.
concerned. But
Amen.
his predecessor was Bernard Herrmann, who worked with Alfred Hitchcock, and he pretty much reinvented film scoring. I mean, up to that point, film scoring was more classical, kind of Robin Hood, whatever. But what Herrmann did was more, it's just these, very
Yeah.
broad chord changes and stuff like that, North by Northwest and stuff. And the amazing amount of movies he did is just freakish. And so I grew up with that. The other thing he brought in was like organ sounds that are just surreal, like Mysterious Island and oh, I can't remember, but just really, really cool stuff like that. So that's been my inspiration, and I look at my scores, and I think they're closer to him
Oh, yeah. Heavily influenced.
than
Yeah.
anybody else. So anyway, all right. So is there any music you really are drawn to?
It's funny, and I like music has been the real blind spot for me that I've had to overcome because while I was able to kind of sneak and maybe watch TV here and there or watch a movie here and there, like we didn't have any music in our house.
Mm,
So for me, it's really interesting, and I'm sure that puts me on the spectrum in some sort of way. But people, I notice how much music really influences people, right? Like, arguably, music can influence people way more than film. And for me, I have like two songs in my entire life that kind of emotionally get inside of me, and I'm like, oh. And the only reason they do that is because they were things that I listened to when I was going through some significant life experience.
were they from your teens?
Uh,
Or
yeah,
later?
one of them was actually the Phantom of the Opera soundtrack.
Wow.
Phantom of the Opera soundtrack. For somebody who didn't listen to music at all, like that was like,
Yeah.
and at that time, I was engaged to somebody, and my best friend was kind of in love with her also, and and he
You were
was
living it.
he was like this beautiful person, and I think at that time internally I did feel like the fan of the opera. I'm like, if people only knew who I
Yeah.
was. So yeah, so that just resonated with me. But now I'm starting to adjust now as a 46-year-old. If you can't believe that, I'm just now being like, oh, this song, oh wow, and getting in there and going, oh, this really has this effect on me, and I can feel it.
Well, there's theories that whatever you were listening to when you were 14 or 15 or something becomes kind of the soundtrack of your life. So
Oh, interesting.
I'm a little steeped in the 70s. So anyway, for me,
Yeah.
yeah, give me Steely Dan any day.
Mhm.
Okay, and then are there genres? Well, sci-fi, I'm guessing to this day, you're probably into. Are there
Oh yeah.
other genres you like? Film noir, drama, comedy, romance,
I mean, I'm like
anything?
I'm a lover of all the formats and all the genres if it's executed well.
Right.
Um, but I really will. I've also am just getting out of this period of time where I would prefer to watch a really shitty sci-fi, not well done, I would prefer to watch that than a really, really good movie. And I think it's because uh, I am viscerally affected by movies. So if I watch a drama, like I remember watching Titanic, and I know that's a cliche of a movie, but
Mm.
Titanic was the first movie where I realized how hurt I could get by a great story. And like I was upset for days after
Wow.
Titanic. And so uh, I don't like to watch really, I mean, I will watch great films. I have to watch great films, but it's like getting into a relationship, right? Like,
That's true.
I'm going to be in this journey and I'm not, and it's guaranteed that at one point, even if it's a good ending, if the ending's good, at one point in this movie, my heart's going to be ripped out and
Yeah.
spit on. And I'm just not always up for that.
I get it. You know, and prepping for these interviews, I'm watching a lot of films now I would have never watched.
Mm.
And I find myself occasionally reaching for the remote and going, I wonder if I ought to fast forward over this scene. I'm just not sure I can handle it.
Yeah, I'm that way. I mean,
And I go, no, I got to watch it.
yeah.
You know,
I
especially,
didn't for the longest time. I didn't tell anybody because look, I mean, look at me. I'm a grown ass man.
I'm scared to
My
death of movies sometimes. Are you kidding me?
yes, yes. My 9-year-old makes fun of me about like when
Yeah,
I
no,
cry
I get you.
and so anyway.
Yeah. Are there any filmmaker, like I tell people when people ask me what kind of music I like, I tend to gravitate to great musicians like Frank
Mm,
Zappa. People that I really respect as a musician. It's almost more important than the music itself to me. I don't know why. I mean, there's certain pieces of music that resonate that I just love as pieces of music, but inevitably they're tied with a composer or a musician or somebody that I just deeply respect. And then everything I hear from them, I hear with a different view. I'm not listening as much to the music as the production. Maybe that's what we share. So I think you got to go to Spielberg, people like that. But then there's plenty of filmmakers that are just tremendous at what they do, but not necessarily is known. Is there anybody you can think of that's on the filmmaking side that you just totally respect as a filmmaker and just kind of love stuff he's doing? It could be Scorsese, who knows,
well, I mean, all the classics I'm pretty impressed with, but I think a byproduct, and again, this is a weakness for me as a filmmaker. I'm fully admitting to this, but I think coming to the game so late, uh, I don't I don't really know a lot of filmmakers. I don't follow a lot of even the greats. I don't follow them. It makes for very interesting conversation when I'm at filmmaking networking sessions when that's what everybody's talking about. Did you see the
right?
new film by Joseph blah blah blah? And I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
no.
no, I'm terrible at names. I miss that stuff all the time. I'm learning. I'm getting better, especially on the composer side. I feel like I'm going through a forced education of the history of film score now,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
learning a lot. And I'm also
yeah,
learning about a lot of modern composers, new composers, and meeting them, which I never thought would happen. One thing about pandemic is everybody's doing interesting,
yeah.
Zoom sessions, and Carlos Rivera, who did the Queen's Gambit, did a wonderful thing. I've connected with him a little bit too.
That's
Man,
amazing.
just watching these guys talk about what they do, that's kind of intrigued me about doing this because I thought, man, yeah, you can
Yeah.
find out a lot of what's going on.
I have it's funny because I do the Seattle Film Summit obviously because it it's just what I'm here to do, I guess. But people don't understand when when you go out and you do something like that, whether it's a podcast, whether it's just a monthly meetup, or like I have learned so much
Yeah,
just because of all the panelists that we've acquired for the Seattle Film Summit over the last 7 years, and um, man, you just get access to these people, and I love that you're doing this because when not that you're doing it now, but when you interview somebody that's brilliant or really knows their shit, I just the chance to interview and
yeah.
learn from them is incredible. I did a lot of that last year. I was just like, wow, I am absorbing so much knowledge from this person right now. It's amazing.
Well, my theory is you always want to turn the tables and get on the other side of the desk or whatever. And and all my success has come from that, where I first was a fly on the wall and then said, I need to participate and get on that board of directors, or and then all of a sudden, and again, I can trace getting on the Seattle Composers Alliance board of directors to the As the Earth Turns premiere at Seattle International Film Festival at the Egyptian, and the person I originally connected with through the Composers Alliance, setting up Fly Films and panels, was the same guy who interviewed me on stage.
No
And
kidding.
stuff, yeah. I mean, those are long sequences of serendipitous moments. I wrote about it in Stage 32. But I agree. I think the more you get in the center of activity, the better. And then people come to you. You don't have to work as hard. As I get older, I'm tired of going to other places. So come to me. So,
Yeah.
and what I can, and I've learned through As the Earth Turns how to festivals and distribution now. So I'm trying to exchange that information with other filmmakers because they don't necessarily know. That's the irony. I'm teaching filmmakers about this stuff, and what am I doing? But I never knew about film licensing until I did it. Came to me. Now I'm teaching it. So
you're officially a Gandalf now. You know that.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a teacher, so that's a normal part of my thing. I've been teaching for years. Years. Anyway. So is there anything you're working on or would like to work on the filmmaking side?
I've got a bunch of projects going on right now. Some of them I'm more excited than others. The one I'm probably most excited about, the feature that's coming into town, and I can't talk too much about that one because so much is really unsaid on it so far.
Really?
But
okay.
But
good. I'm glad to see your because I am afraid that you're getting lost in the arts administration side of things. I want to see you direct, man. I want to see you act.
I did. I spent like 5 or 6 years I started working with the local chamber of commerce because I knew that I was reaching, speaking of glass ceilings, as an artist, I was reaching a ceiling of going, the legislators don't seem to really care about creativity in this state. And we have people don't really think about this, but the gaming industry in the state of Washington accounts for something like 90% of the creative economy of our state. And when you look at that number, it's a huge number. So our state legislators, when we look at creativity, we're like up there in the nation. We're 6th or 7th, but it's not. It's gaming. And the rest of all the creative cultures feel like they're floundering, the silos. And so I spent some time getting to know some senators and kind of doing that thing and understanding that process and learning that process. Yeah. And so now I'm looking back going, I mean, it's all worth it, but it definitely has steered me away from some projects that I wanted to get done. I have a pilot that I have been working on for 7 years as a writer, 7 years.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know how to write. I just didn't know how to take what was going on in here and translate it to a fluid story on the page. And so I'm coming close to completing a pilot that I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of it. And I think not that it's important, but I'm ready to take this puppy straight to Amazon Studios or Netflix and pitch it. So that's one thing that I'm nearing completion that I've been working on a lot and I'm super proud of.
Well, I'll write your theme.
Okay, there you go.
No, really, I'm not kidding. And in fact, that could be important in the pitch.
Yeah, that's true.
Make it more than a piece of paper. Why not? You gotta put something together.
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
That could be a brand, man, or just something. It could, make it more interesting.
Yeah, I'll talk to you about it.
For your life.
It's up your alley too. something we've
Up
written
my
down.
something, but all right. So, do you have any regular collaborators?
So
Yeah.
is that a real question?
No, it's literally my one of my questions. Yeah.
Do I have any regular collaborators?
Yeah. In crime.
Um, in the film world, I mean, we have a pretty small circle here in the state.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, the last 2 or 3 years, I haven't really been. I've been making the Holly Shorts product,
Yeah.
and this one that we're doing this year, I'm super excited about this one, um, which is we're flying in the see here. The writer is flying in from South Africa. The director is flying in from Africa. The DP is flying in from Germany. And the lead actress, who is a star on a Showtime series, is flying in from LA. And the entire production, all the leads are female.
Wow.
So it's
Yeah.
from producer to costume designer to DOP, and with an entirely African American cast. And I'm just one, and it's now because we've been doing this production partnership with Holly Shorts for 5 years. They're automatically Oscar qualified. So
Wow.
that helps us now get
Yeah.
to talent at a different level. So I'm excited about that one.
Man, that sounds great.
But because of pandemic, I'm queued up now. So we've got 2 Holly Shorts projects that we have to do this year. That one is going first, but I've got another project I'll talk to you about. It's called The Inherent Problem with Time Travel. It's a cute little short.
Oh yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
So I'll hit you up on that one.
All right. I'm ready. Do it.
But yeah, just and then trying to get ahead with the collaborators. The other big thing with the Seattle Film Summit we're doing this year is we're just talking to everybody earlier. So like we're talking with Seattle, the Office of Film and Music, and Washington Filmworks, and this Arts Commission, and the Arts Alliance. And instead of what typically happens with the summit is we're all volunteers. We just put it together at the end of the year, and it's like, hey, come jump on this panel. But now we're like, okay, we're going to carve out this little block for you. What do you want to do that's creative and exciting? So we may be highlighting the Innovation Lab. We may be doing a creative advocacy boot camp. And instead of just teaching people how to be creative advocates, we may give them like a scavenger hunt to go out and then come back and pitch to real legislators who will be at the summit, and then give them awards for who can do it the best.
So I assume it'll be live in November.
It's we moved it up to September, so it's virtual from September 3rd to 10th. This all goes public in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, okay. All right.
3rd to 10th, and then the 11th, which is Saturday, September 11th, will be in person at the Hyatt.
Really? Oh, hybrid. Wow, that's great. I was worried. I thought they're not going to do it live.
Yeah. No, we're going to do one day in person, and then if things open up, if we're
they're going to open up. I'm very, very optimistic at this point.
Yeah, I am too. So if that happens,
I'm not even wearing a mask in my studio, and I have custom masks that I made myself.
Yeah. Oh, nice. What's it say?
Vintage American Drummer. This is one of. I have many designs.
I like that. That's good.
I have a Threadless account, and you can get T-shirts. In fact, this is my logo. I did design this.
I dig it.
Yeah.
I dig it.
So anyway, well, okay. So your goal in the next 6 months is surviving the pandemic, first of all, of course.
Yeah, number one.
And I've had my shots, so I'm.
Oh, congratulations!
I'm ahead of you.
That's exciting.
And
yeah.
So I can actually have hopefully lunch with my sister in a few weeks for her birthday.
So, that's great.
In person.
Yeah.
And then in the next 6 months, having the summit, making a few movies. Any other goals?
No, just keep moving the ball forward. I'm really, as I told you, it's creativity that's my thing. So I'm eventually. I'm trying to bring in the other creative silos, and it feels like film is the appropriate creative silo to lead the endeavor, because you can argue that film encompasses 30 different type of artistic styles, whether it's
Yeah.
painting, whether it's photography, acting, writing, makeup, costumes. So I want to work now at creating opportunity at the summit for creative silos who might not, traditionally feel they're part of the film arena. In
Man.
other words, why don't I bring a couple publishers to the Seattle Film Summit and let the authors come and pitch to the publishers? Why don't I bring a couple music producers and create opportunities for musicians to? So I really want to evolve it over the next 5 years into a creative summit, not just a film summit.
Good. Good. Yeah. I'm all for it. Okay. Well, I think we've spoken about everything there is in the universe. So
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Twice.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. It's fun. It's
Yes,
always fun to
thank you,
chat and catch
Ben.
up.
And I honestly hope to work with you again and again in the future.
It's coming
So,
soon.
yeah.
I'm transitioning back into content creation, and
Yeah.
especially now that when I first started creating content with you, and I was really learning on the fly, and I didn't really know how to, so I look at my short films and I think they're all solid short films, but I look at them and I go, what was I really trying to tell the audience here? What is unique about me that I was trying to put in? And I think some of that was missing. And so now that I've had a few more years under my belt, and now I'm starting to know what stories I want to tell and what things I want to say to the world. I'm excited about getting back into content creation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm still working on a biopic about Richard Lyford, so who knows? But everybody,
Yeah.
my goal is to put everybody to work in the Northwest in the next year. Really?
I love that goal.
That's true. I don't know if I'm going to be successful, but anyway. And the doc is almost done. My little mini doc. So I've been waiting on Disney, and they finally said okay.
Congratulations, man.
So the DVD is coming with many bonus things. So
awesome.
I'm working on that. Yeah. Yeah.
Let us know so we can promote it when it
comes. Oh yeah, yeah, it'll be out. And it's still waiting for Turner Classic Movies, so it'll be on hopefully soon. Okay, well, thank you again, Ben, and thank you for listening to yet another odd podcast about filmmaking and music and all the rest of it. So keep writing out there, keep making movies, keep writing music, whatever you're doing. Keep alive and write if you get work. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.